You call me whatever you want today. It has not been an easy day. I'm joined today by Matt Cochran, Max Chatsko. Guys, we bantered a little bit about football, but I know I'm excited. I'm a New England Patriots fan. We have the Houston Texans this weekend, but Matt, you're a Miami Dolphins fan. That's why we hate each other so much. No, just kidding. Matt and I actually had dinner this week. Matt, are you excited about the prospects for the Dolphins here?
I'm excited that Brady and Belichick's 20-year run at dominance of running the AFC East is finally might be over. So that's the real excitement. Like, I know we're battling it out, and the Buffalo Bills are good, and Tua still makes some rookie mistakes, so he's looked incredible. But the real excitement there is that the Patriots, I think their time has come.
I am not so sure about that. Max, I don't think you're a giant football fan, but can you really root for Ben Roethlisberger? Like, pretty much a criminal there. Like, are you a fan?
Absolutely. When you live in Pittsburgh, it's you have to be a sports fan. So unfortunately, that includes rooting for the Pittsburgh Pirates. So we try to, ignore that part. But yes, Steelers 9-0. We're going to be 10-0 because we play the Jaguars this weekend. So looking forward to that.
The Pirates need to bring back their old jaunty hats there. This, of course, is 7 Investing Now. We're going to cover the news of the day, but with a long-term perspective. Max, we're going to start with you for the top story. So there's been vaccine news. I think like 75% of our shows have in some fashion focused on vaccines. But why don't you talk a little bit about the 2 things that happened later this week, the Pfizer news and the AstraZeneca news?
Right, Dan. So we've had a lot of news in recent weeks with 3 different vaccines now. So at first it was the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. Later that was followed up by the Moderna vaccine. And then just recently we've heard more about the Oxford University and AstraZeneca vaccine. So all of these are the front runners. These 3 are the ones that are most likely to be approved under emergency use authorizations by regulators around the world. So the Oxford University and AstraZeneca vaccine works a bit differently than the 2 others from Pfizer and Moderna. So it's not based on messenger RNA, mRNA. It's based on a deactivated virus. This virus usually it gives chimpanzees respiratory illnesses, but they've nuked all that, so it can't infect you. And they've just engineered it to express the spike protein from SARS-CoV-2, which is causing the pandemic, on its surface, and they inject that to you. Your body triggers an immune response. It learns a memory of that from your adaptive immune system, and that's how you become immune and have protection against SARS-CoV-2.
So Max, let me jump in here. As a regular person, these are 2 different types of vaccines. If they both prove equally effective, is one better for different types of person? Should you want one or the other? I know the AstraZeneca vaccine has proven very successful in older people, but are there other sort of practical reasons that makes one different than the other?
So I'm going to ask Sam if she can pull up that graphic. Who knows if we can get that going today, given how we've been doing. Oh, there we go. So one of the more practical concerns for distributing and storing these vaccines is what temperature they can be safely stored at. So this graphic here shows the temperatures that each vaccine candidate, and that's important to point out, it's still a candidate, it's not actually approved, any of these, what temperatures they need to be stored at to remain viable for 6 months. So as you can see, the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine needs to be stored at negative 70 degrees Celsius. That's negative 94 degrees Fahrenheit, very cold. That's going to pose problems because this isn't going to be at your Walgreens or your CVS, your doctor's office. Many hospitals don't even have storage for this. So the problem there is it can be stored in a normal freezer, but only for about 5 days, or maybe it can push that to like 15 days. So it needs 2 doses, 28 days apart. That's going to pose some logistical problems because you're going to need 2 different containers to dose every individual. Moderna has a little bit more, a little warmer temperature, even though it's still based in mRNA, negative 20 degrees Celsius for 6 months. And that can actually be kept in a normal fridge or freezer, which is common in pharmacies and hospitals and doctor offices, and remain viable for 30 days. So that has a bit more of a advantage, at least, or fewer logistical hurdles in that sense. And then the Oxford University and AstraZeneca vaccine candidate can be stored safely at 6 months, remain viable at a normal freezer or fridge temperature. So that might have some, again, fewer hurdles than each of the prior 2. Now, one other thing to keep in mind, Dan, is these vaccines will be available globally but not in the same amounts, right? So the Oxford Nanopore, I'm sorry, I keep wanting to say Nanopore. It's a company in sequencing that I like. University of Oxford vaccine is mostly going to the UK, most of their doses. And then the second location to get the most doses will be the EU. And then a lower number will be going to the United States. They also actually have an agreement to send 1 billion doses to India. Moderna, again, it's an American company, so it's most of their doses are going to be going staying here domestically. And then BioNTech and Pfizer, most of their doses are going to the EU with a smaller amount coming to the United States. So, and again, depending on where you live, if you live in a city or in a rural community in the US, you might not have the option to choose all three. So it's not really, we're not going to have a choice, I don't think, in a lot of areas, and especially early on.
So I have no idea if anyone is seeing this. We stopped and started the show, which I think confused Facebook and Twitter. So if you're watching, please add a comment. I think it's very likely that we are taping a live show that people will be able to see later when we repost it. If it could go wrong, it has gone wrong today. So let's talk about the market implications of this. Max, it's going to be maybe the spring before these are widely available. And obviously there's going to be a hierarchy of who can get them. We don't know what that's going to look like because we have a little bit of a government mess at the moment. But that being said, Matt, are you optimistic that in the spring life will be at least kind of back to normal?
Yeah. You know what, Dan? I am optimistic. I would call it cautiously optimistic, but optimistic nevertheless. I think people are largely chomping at the bit to get back to normal. And when given safety reassurances, I think they will gladly get back to resuming everyday life. And I suspect when there is an official all clear signal given, we're going to see pent up demand for things like travel and live events and other in-person experiences.
Max, now why don't you give us the medical read on that? Do you think that's practical, or do you think that's being optimistic given the production issues here?
Yeah, I think right now, I think most people are still pricing in like the best case scenario, even in their own individual lives, not just pricing into the markets. This is going to take time. It might take up to a year, or maybe till the summer next fall, before we really vaccinate a good amount of the population. That said, I think by the end of the year, we probably have about 100 million cases in the United States. So close to 1 in 3 Americans will probably have had a SARS-CoV-2 infection since the pandemic has started. So that's not enough for herd immunity, but it will break a lot of chains of transmission. So even if a lot of people aren't vaccinated early on, I think by the time next spring rolls around, the virus just isn't going to have a lot of hosts to infect, certainly less than it, the year prior. So in a weird way, that's going to help help life get back to normal sooner, and not necessarily just because there's a vaccine out.
Max is being very optimistic about Americans' willingness to get vaccinated. For those of you watching this, I apologize. I am pretty sure we are not live, and we are actually just taping this. We had a bit of a technical snafu at the beginning where we don't know what went wrong. It wouldn't play our open video. It was repeating some of the audio, so we stopped the feed, left, and I think that killed all of our live feeds. So we apologize, but we will make this available. Obviously, if you're seeing it now, you figured out that we made it available after the fact through different channels. Guys, we are going to move on. We are, of course, brought to you by 7 Investing. We are almost half the team of 7 Investing advisors. What do? We give you 7 stock picks. Each one of us picks our highest conviction stock each month, and we give you a lot as to why we're picking it. We're actually taping later this afternoon our pitch calls where we all talk to each other and we say, okay, here's 15 minutes. Here's why I picked this stock that you've never heard of, or in Max's case, a stock no one's ever heard of. And this is why I like it. And we make slides. And then during the month, we update you. We make those calls available to our members. So if you're not a member, feel free, please join us at 7investing.com/subscribe. But Matt, we're going to head into what we're watching. And you brought up a story. I didn't actually see this one today. It is giant banking news. PMC has agreed to acquire BBVA USA for $11.6 billion. Matt, tell us what that means.
Oh, that's right, Dan. Yeah, it's a very big deal. It's going to create a coast-to-coast bank with more than $560 billion in assets and almost 3,000 branches across 25 states. And that includes 29 of the top 30 markets. So for PNC, this will expand their reach to include Texas, Alabama, Florida, Colorado, California, New Mexico, and Arizona.
So why is a bank growing at a time where there's a lot of pressure on banks? There's a lot of alternative ways to bank. Is this more about obtaining customers, or is it more about the physical assets?
I actually think it's almost like it's either grow or die. Like, PNC, well, for one, just specific to this merger, PNC management believes that they can cut $900 million in annual expenses out of BBVA's budget, which is actually, they might actually do. That sounds like a lot, but PNC has had success integrating acquisitions before with this same game plan. It expands their reach. Now, consolidation is just going to be coming to the banking space. We saw this last year when BB&T merged with SunTrust to form Truist Financial. And it was a little bit different. For them, it's more about bank branch efficiency. They covered a lot of the same areas, and they're going to be able to cut out a lot of branches and still cover the same area. This deal specifically expands PNC's reach to include a lot more markets and a lot more opportunity for them.
So, Matt, you talked a little bit about in your notes here. Lower interest rates are not great for banks. It's harder for them to make money. But this will actually help them in a certain area there. You use the term NIM. I don't know what NIM is, but feel free to share.
So, like, as interest rates lower, that hurts banks, right? So NIM is net interest margin. And what that means is like, say, like if you go back 12 months, 24 months, 36 months, go back years, like, it wasn't too long ago, but you could open up a savings account at a bank and you might get 1% interest rate on your savings account. And the bank would turn around, take that deposit and use it to lend out for, like, let's say a mortgage for 4.5%. And so that's called, that difference is the net interest margin. But as interest rates lower, like, okay, now you open up a savings account and you might get 0.25% interest rate. But now they can only go out and lend that money for like a mortgage or something like that for 3%. So that interest has narrowed significantly, and that puts a lot of pressure on banks. And so what you're going to see is, I think you're going to see a lot more consolidation in this space because of that kind of pressure, and because of pressure from more nimble fintechs like Square's Cash App or PayPal and PayPal's Venmo, and also online banks like Chime or Ally. They're putting a lot of pressure on legacy banks from one end, and the banks are getting more pressure on the other end from the contraction of the net interest margin rate, and that's putting a lot of pressure on banks. So banks are going to be doing this. For one, it's going to give them more tech firepower, and it's going to be more efficient. They can cover more area, and they can cover more area more efficiently.
Thanks, Matt. And for those of you seeing this, you obviously massive technical difficulties today. Our live feed started. We cut it off. We were having technical problems, and then we're back and we're not live. So we're recording this. We hope you are watching it. Please send us notes with your questions that you can send it to us at 7investing on Twitter or info@7investing.com. Max, you wanted to talk fuel cell stocks, and you made the note, this can't possibly end well.
If you look at some of the year-to-date stock charts of fuel cell stocks, they're absolutely through the roof. It's insane. So Plug Power is up over 650% this year. And then Bloom Energy, Fuel Cell Energy, and Valid Power Systems all up over 110% year-to-date. And to me, that is just crazy. So the reason for this, though, Dan, is all of these companies have kind of changed their storytelling and their corporate marketing, and they're starting to point investors towards this opportunity in hydrogen. So that would be, everyone's kind of talking about the hydrogen economy, right? So this is like, one day we'll be making hydrogen from, renewable energy or nuclear power, and we'll be all driving along with zero emission vehicles and throwing it through pipelines, and it's great. And I think that's a flawed thinking. I don't think the hydrogen economy is going to work very well.
So there's a lot of ways this can go off the rails. What are some of your favorite things that go wrong? We always talk about things we like to invest in. It's rare we actually talk about things that we don't expect to go well.
Yeah, so I see this as a source of technological hype. Previous examples might include algae biofuels in the 2000s and 2010s, or 3D printing. Remember when that was going to be the next big thing? Or autonomous vehicles a few years ago. So some of these things have, been relegated to niche markets. Autonomous vehicles will probably take off, but it kind of got hyped up a little too soon, too early. For hydrogen, there's some major technical challenges and some misconceptions as well that are floating around. So one of the common things that I see, and you might see it as well when you're looking at hydrogen stocks or fuel cell stocks, is that hydrogen has a high energy density. I see it written all the time, lots of articles, people talk about it, and that's absolutely wrong. Hydrogen has one of the lowest energy densities of any fuel. What people get confused about is that it has a high specific energy. So the difference here is that energy density is the energy per mass. Energy density is the energy per volume, right? So that looks very high, but you have to compress hydrogen to, in ridiculous standards in order to get that energy density out. But specific energy, which is what really matters more for fuels, is it's very low. It's the energy per unit mass. So hydrogen is very lightweight, and therefore it has a ridiculously low specific energy, and that's what matters for fuel cells. So Sam, I think we have another graphic, if you can throw that up for. Right, so here's from the Energy Information Administration, and this is just comparing, the different energy densities. Both the you can see the energy density on the x-axis, that's per unit volume, and then the specific energy, which matters a little bit more for hydrogen, is on the y-axis. So yes, it has a high specific energy, but it's very low in terms of the energy density per volume. So compared to gasoline and diesel, hydrogen fuels just aren't really going to work that well. It's not very pragmatic. We'd have to store them in tanks that are either very heavy, which isn't great when you're rolling down the highway or have a big truck. That's going to slow you down and throw you off. Or if we even are stationary at fueling stations, we have to have these super cool tanks or high compression tanks to store it. It's just not going to work very well. Similarly, go ahead.
Yeah, let me jump in. So I think it's fair to say here that you don't believe hydrogen cells are going to be the future of this, and you're generally bullish on batteries. Is that reasonable?
Yes. So hydrogen has other issues in terms of like pipelines too. We can't actually transport hydrogen fuel through pipelines very well, steel pipelines, because it causes something called hydrogen embrittlement. And all you need to know about that is that it can blow up your pipeline. So we don't want to do that, and a lot of pipeline operators might be pretty cautious about how much hydrogen they actually want to transport, because it's a huge risk for them. So the main conclusion, I guess, is yes, this is kind of hyped up. Hydrogen fuels, it sounds great on paper, but there's a lot of technical issues that stand in the way. It's not a very pragmatic solution. And the reality here is that electric fuels, batteries, that's the future of transportation. It's not hydrogen.
As we move on this very broken, very struggling edition of 7 Investing Now, which hopefully you eventually get to see this. We're going to do our best. But guys, it is time to enter the home stretch. Wonder Woman, 1984. That is a giant movie. The first one did about $900 million globally. It's going to debut in theaters, sort of, but it's also going to be on HBO Max. Matt, this is an area you and I both cover, sort of in entertainment. It's a really interesting play. This is the biggest movie that's going to be mostly available for streaming. And I think the idea is, well, we have this investment. We don't want to leave it sitting around. Can it drive people to HBO Max? Do you think this is the right call, Matt?
Yeah, I do. I mean, look, it's a tough situation for these studios, for players like HBO Max. Like, what is the right decision in a bad situation? And I think the best way to make lemonade from lemon, so to speak, is to do this. Streaming is clearly going to be it is already huge, but it's just going to get bigger as we move forward. And I think this is the way to do that. In a bad situation like this, take your big blockbusters and put it exclusively or jointly with theaters, on your streaming service, and get subscribers.
I actually have very mixed feelings about this. I think it's kind of a mistake. I think this is a movie that probably would have been $1 billion driver, and I don't think it's going to get that many people to subscribe to HBO Max and stick around. I think Disney Plus, I think that strategy works. I'm not sure HBO Max, if that strategy works. It's sort of Disney as the whole family model. It's about a third the price. That's important. It's $6.99 versus $14.99, or maybe about half the price. So it's an interesting idea. I'll be watching Wonder Woman 84. It will also be coming out in theaters. Some people will go see it in theaters. Movie theaters are open because, hey, we live in Florida. Like we don't worry about that kind of stuff. I won't be going to the movies anytime soon. Guys, it is now time to hit the finisher. I think we could all use a drink after how the show has been going, but it's only 12:30, so we're not going to do that. This is from our very own Austin Lieberman. This poll got 5,740 votes. I believe Tesla, NVIDIA, and Zoom will be the next trillion-dollar market cap companies in that order. Which do you think will be first? About 60%, 58.4% of you said Tesla, 28.6% said NVIDIA, 7% said Zoom, 6% said other, and there were 69 comments on this, so there were a lot of people going in other directions. Guys, I think it's going to be Tesla too. I also think it's possible that Tesla gets to $1 trillion and then goes to $500 billion and then goes to $2 trillion. I think there could be a lot of volatility there. Max, your thoughts?
I think just because Tesla's kind of this like momentum or like almost a cult stock, right? Like that's going to help it a lot and it's going to make it volatile. But I mean, I don't know what the valuation is now. It's over like 400 billion, right? It's crazy. So based on the business, I don't think it's worth that. But, how do you argue against Tesla getting to $1 trillion, whether it deserves it or not?
And Matt, I'll give you the last word as we blissfully close out this show. I don't think that's a word, but it'll do today.
I think we all understand what you mean, Dan. Like out of those choices, I would have picked NVIDIA, but I voted other, and I think it's going to be Facebook. I think Facebook has a lot of great tailwinds coming up, which includes the Oculus, which is already exceeding their expectations for sales. It's at a reasonable price point, and I think it gives Facebook a whole other option. WhatsApp is opening up for payments in India. But Dan, real quick, let me throw out another option that not too many people talk about, and that's Taiwan Semi. They're almost a $500 billion market cap now, and they make like many semiconductors that no one else can right now. It's almost like a monopoly, and they're scaling, and I think it will not be too long before they reach the $1 trillion market cap.
It's going to be an interesting one to follow. That closes this edition of 7 Investing Now that none of you were able to see now. Hopefully you will be able to see it later. We're going to try to rebroadcast this. We're going to post it on all our feeds and try to put the links. So obviously if you're seeing me say this, you know that happened. So I am Dan Klein. For Matt Cochran, for Maxx Chatsko, we'll see you Monday. We'll try to do better. Guys, see you later.